Well, is Genesis 29 a modern love story? Now, this, of course, Genesis 29 is where Jacob falls in love with Rachel, maybe. Now, I was always taught this is a modern day love story. This even in Bible class back when I was in high school, this was taught. Oh, what a love story, Genesis 29. C.S. Lewis explains we struggle to even imagine how this was viewed prior to the transformation of courtly love. Now, if we're talking about courtly love, remember courtly love is during the days of the knights, how this romantic love came in, and this was a big focus, and how the knight, the white knight, would do whatever he could to win my lady's heart and her affections. And so Genesis 29, Pastor Dalrock writes that this is a great example of this. Even C.S. Lewis talked about this as well. If you'll remember, verse 18 in Genesis 29, Jacob was in love with Rachel and says, I'll work for you 7 years. He tells her father 7 years to get Rachel. And verse 20, so Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, and they seemed like only a few days because of his love for her. And verse 21, then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, my time is complete. I want to make love to her. Now that's the NIV. But Pastor Dalrock writes, if we look at the original Hebrew of Genesis 29, if we're not seeing it through the view of courtly love, romantic love, it could translate to something quite a bit different that would probably be more accurate to the way things went back in the ancient days, where women were more viewed as property than they were as romantic equal partnerships that we would have today. So he explains that verse 18, Jacob, instead of saying Jacob loved Rachel, it could be translated from the Hebrew that Jacob liked Rachel and then told Laban, I'll work for you 7 years. Verse 20, Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, and they seemed like only a few days, because in the Hebrew it would translate more clearly to because of his sexual desire for her. And then verse 21, Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, my time is complete. I want to go into her. Talking about his sexual desire for her. And so Pastor Dalrock writes that Jacob's love for Rachel is not the sentimental, purifying, true love of the modern tales, such as the white knights who win my lady's heart, like Sir Lancelot and Guinevere, when Guinevere was actually married to King Arthur, and it was an adulterous thing. So he says that it could be that Jacob loved Rachel because she was beautiful, and he wasn't captivated by her inner beauty. He didn't love her for who she was. He wanted her to be his and wanted to have sex with her. So much so that Jacob didn't even realize that he had spent the night having sex with the wrong sister until the next morning. You remember verse 21? Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go into her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the palace and made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to him, and he went in unto her, meaning they came together in a biblical way. And Laban gave unto his daughter Leah Zilpah and his maid for a handmaid. And it came to pass in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And you'd say, well, why on earth did Jacob not realize that he was with the wrong woman all night? And then, so Pastor Dalrock also points out that we're not told Rachel had any romantic or sexual feelings towards Jacob either. Jacob never wins her heart like we do in the medieval times and today. We contrast this with 1 Samuel 18, where we learn that Michal was in love with David. So it was clear in that passage that Michal is in love with David. But not so with Jacob. Jacob offers to work for Rachel's father for 7 years, and her father replies that he may as well give her to Jacob instead of some other man. That's verse 19. Laban says, it's better that I give her to you than some other man. So stay here with me. So again, it's this idea, there's not this this isn't this classic love story really in Genesis 29, right? This is women are more viewed as property. All right, I'll give you my daughter. But then he tricks them because he's got this older daughter he needs to get rid of. So I'm going to give you Leah. Okay. And then Jacob has to work even longer to get the woman he really desires. And by desires, it's probably more of it's not a true love. It's more of a sexual desire. And C.S. Lewis then explains the legacy of courtly love, this romantic white knight love, means that we can't even read stories like Genesis 29 in any other way than a love story. It's not to say that Jacob didn't have emotional feelings for Rachel. If he didn't have strong emotional feeling for her before the wedding, he certainly had them by the time of her death, what Scripture says. But the story of their courtship is anything but romantic. And the description of Jacob wanting to marry her so he could have sex with her is about as straightforward as it could be. There is also not even an inkling of the idea that romantic love is pure or sanctifying in this story. Again, romantic love being pure and sanctifying is the idea of that comes from courtly love, where Scripture teaches that marriage is what sanctifies sex, not romantic love. It says, but the legacy of courtly love hovers over us like a supermassive black hole, warping everything related to sex and marriage with nearly irresistible force in our minds. We just don't notice it because from our perspective, it has always been there. That, well, of course, this must have been a classic love story in Scripture, and it most likely was not. Anyway, we got to get this corrected. We got to get this turned around. You know, this obsession with romantic love, I really think it's just tearing apart our marriages, community. I mean, romantic love is nice. It's good. I love my wife romantically. But I'm more committed to her than I am just in romantic love because I vowed to her, right? I think that's much more strong than, I've got romantic love, let's be together. Anyway, Christ is winning. He is building his church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Until next time, this is the Postmillennial Man.